Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you happen to be signing in from today. My name is Jenna, and welcome to How to Grow Your Co-working Space in 2024. We are going to get started in just a few moments, letting a few more people log in and get settled. Really excited for this conversation today. We have two incredible guests on the call with us, Tori and Steve from very different corners of the world, who I will introduce to you all in just a moment. And before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items as always. So I'm going to walk you through, on the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see a few different tabs. Would love for anybody who's, oh, hi, Landon. Anybody who's signing in to just say hello, maybe where you're signing in from. It's been, oh, hi, Andrea, and probably everybody from Greater Nexus. We have people from all over the world signing in today, Hong Kong, Australia, UK, US, Canada, Mexico. So really great to have so many of you here. We were just chatting, Tori, Steve, and I, about how the co-working community is global, and that's such a special part of this community. So really wonderful to welcome you all from all over the world. Next to the chat box, you're going to see a question tab. We're going to ask you throughout the remainder of the webinar, about 45 minutes or so, to drive any questions that come to mind into the questions tab. And something that's really special about this webinar is that this is live, and we have the ability to stop, customize, look out for those questions, and make sure that we are adapting the conversation to answer anything that's top of mind for who's on this webinar today. Next to that question tab, you're going to see the polls tab. We do have a few that we're going to launch throughout the webinar, and so I'll keep your eyes posted on those, or I'll give you a cue for when to look at that tab. And without further ado, I think we're 2 minutes after, so I think we'll jump in. Like I said, my name is Jenna. Welcome. I lead our customer success team here at Optix, and I am sitting in Vancouver, Canada, where Optix is located. Very excited to introduce Tori and Steve. Like I said, very different corners of the world. Tori's sitting actually on February 22nd in New Zealand. So I'm going to start with you, Tori, CEO, founder, owner of Bad Company in New Zealand. Would love for you to introduce yourself and also what Bad Company is all about.
Hi, everyone. My name's Tori. I am currently at the moment in a place called Wanaka, which is near Queenstown in the South Island. Bad Company is a destination co-working model that now has 3 locations, and last year was franchised with the lovely Belinda opening in Hawke's Bay. So yeah, we've been around for seven and a half years now, and loving the journey, and look forward to all your questions.
I think that's a very humble introduction, Tori, but really excited to have all of your experience and wisdom for this webinar. Steve, I'm going to pass it over to you. Also an owner, founder of a co-working space, but growing community, not just limited to 4 walls. Steve, would love for you to introduce who you are and what ECOMSquare is all about.
Absolutely. I'm sitting in Squamish, which is just an hour outside of Vancouver. Like Jenna mentioned, founder of a few different businesses that I'm currently active in, ECOMSquare being one of them, which is going to be mostly about what I'm going to be talking about today. We're a niche-focused co-working space around e-commerce as an industry, even still loosely defined around supporting businesses that have any sort of transactional component oriented around their brand. So it allows us to dive deep into practitioners, owners, operators, even vendors who participate within that space. And we've built up amenities and support structure and networks to help enable and empower early stage small businesses. We've really narrowed into post revenue, so businesses who have launched past the point and have some degree of product market fit, but are looking to take that next leap in either hiring their first employee, leaving their job full time and focusing on their the first starting points of their business. And we found, a lot of those initial steps. There's a lot of stress, financial pressure, lack of resourcing, lack of network, and we've tried to consolidate a lot of those pain points into a single roof. But yeah, we started that space in 2019, 20, but our community has spun since 2014. Yeah, looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, a lot of years between the two of you in terms of experience with growing, facilitating, and managing a community. So really excited for both of you I've said this so many times, but just to hear both of you talk and hear your experience is a real treat. So we're going to dive in. For everybody who signed up, you know what this is about. We're talking today about retention. This is a part 2 of a 3-part webinar series. The first part, we really focused on that top of the funnel, acquisition and co-working, how to manage leads, how to generate leads. And now we're really shifting into the second part of your user journey, which would be more focused on, you've got these members, they're in your space, they're part of your community, and how do you now hold them? How do you retain them? How do you nurture them? And the reason why this is part of our webinar series is because last year, in our Optix annual survey, we learned that 25% of our clients felt that retaining members was a pain point in 2023. And that's a high number. And knowing how much it costs to acquire a member in the first place, retention is something that is so important and pivotal to the financial success and the revenue that you're focused on generating. Alongside this pain point, 25% of our clients feeling this, we also wanted to share that 45% of our clients felt that building brand awareness was also something that they struggled with in 2023. And the reason why we share these two stats together is because your brand is so much a part of your experience. And so building that brand and learning how to retain your members really do go hand in hand together. We're going to talk lots more about that. So not a surprise, it costs 5 times more to acquire a new member than it does to keep a current one. Retention is very much a part of financial goals and part of your growth plan. So it matters, and this is a really exciting topic, especially with how co-working has become synonymous with the word community. Retention is a really important conversation for us to be having. So with all that being said, I would love to jump in. Steve, maybe I'll kick this one off with you, but would love to just kick off with really high level about what strategy you employed with ECOMSquare to increase retention. Like what were you thinking about as part of your strategy to engage and keep members as part of your community?
Yeah, we didn't, I wouldn't say this was a huge pain point for us. I think co-working in general attracts, nomadics and transient individuals who are, traveling around town. They just want to camp out in a place that's comfortable and they feel part of something for at least the time period that they're staying there. We definitely had a bit of that, but it was, we did expect them to have a horizon for them to be a member of their space. We did have a few that jumped between co-working spaces before they committed, and everyone that committed to us were like, "Wow, this is a super unique space. It's beautiful. The aesthetic is very different, and we made it a bit more moody than a lot of really brightly oriented spaces. We had tons of plants inside as well. Sometimes felt a bit like a jungle, but everyone said the main point was the community component. They made a lot of friends out of it. Some people even extended their trip. So one couple who sat at a place, they were like, "Oh, we're just going to be here for the summer for 2 months, and then head back to the UK, and then plan back, and maybe we'll come back to Vancouver." They ended up extending until 9 or 10 months before Christmas time, and then ended up traveling back home. But it was a pretty cool experience. I think our niche focus also orienting around multiple facets of e-commerce as an industry also just created a really natural moat for us as a business. We tried to lower the entry point and have different points where, if people weren't making a significant amount of money, they could still dip their toes into our community, experience the space, experience the value of it. And, the lowest barrier of that was attending an event or a speaker series. It was, sometimes $5 or free to attend, or $10. That still covered our ass for, revenue generation or whatever capital we put into an event. Whereas the highest tier was, full-time membership. You get, a la carte every access point for the space. But we saw people, touch with different points within the journey, as also, upgraded their path as they engaged with within the community. But yeah, our retention was pretty good. We saw, it was also a really interesting time in market. Obviously COVID shook up the entire landscape of just office space and commuting in general. And we saw, when we opened, everything was closed. We had significant lockdowns in Canada all across the board, and people were just looking for a space to plant themselves at, even though maybe their main business was, getting rid of their main lease. They had, some very social creatures within the organization that still wanted that sense of, belonging and commuting and removing themselves from their living room or their crying baby at home that they just felt distracted. But yeah, it was, I think a lot of those things contributed to our ability to retain our talent.
Yeah, it's interesting. The slide that we have up currently, the 59% of people joining co-working spaces has to do with an enjoyable atmosphere. And so I like that you spoke to the fact you created a space, like a physical environment that was also maybe a little bit different, and it was going to attract a very specific kind of person who liked that environment. Also the ability to interact with others through events and to build a sense of community. That the different touch points that you were saying where people would enter as members, were you always requiring people to purchase memberships, even if they were attending events? Were they an ECOMSquare member, or were these one-off, I want to come to an event in February, and then again, I might come back in November?
Yeah, we lowered the barrier of entry to, if you just wanted to be a one-off and you attended an event, you could just pay for the ticket on Eventbrite. If you did commit to a membership, and our base membership was $59 a month, all your event tickets would be free. Oh, so you could attend unlimited, and that sometimes was the trigger point for people to commit to.
Yeah. I know that we're going to dive in a lot more into events. We just launched a poll. Thank you, team in the background. So would encourage everybody to quickly hop into the polls tab and just answer if you are currently running events. Yes, no, or you're maybe in the future looking to start launching events. And we'll come back to that poll in a bit. Tori, I want to hand it over to you. You and Steve's models are very different, and you have a different approach to how you're building community. Would love for you to speak to what your strategy has looked like over the last 7 years in terms of connecting people and building a sense of community in your space.
Thanks, Jenna. So I don't come from a traditional office background. I come from a very creative background. And so when it came to creating our first space, it was very important to have natural light, soft textures, plants everywhere, like Steve, and really create something that as soon as you sort of walked into the space, made you feel at ease, regulated your nervous system, and felt like a touch of home. All of our spaces have that homely aspect, not necessarily just to do with our, fit outs and furnishings, but we're such a believer in having a host and having a special type of person to really lead that and hold the space for people and really understand what it means to hold space. So that's definitely kind of where we've always operated from. And in terms of the model being destination co-working, the type of people that walk through our door, they're really choosing to live there, and they're choosing to live there at a later point in their lives where they might have left family, they might have left, like really old friends, and they're coming in to specifically and predominantly connect. And so our community is very thriving in the sense of, you jump onto the messenger chat immediately and you might find a house to rent or a flatmates, or you might, your first day being within the space, be going to a yoga class or going skiing with a whole bunch of people, and all of a sudden you've got 8 friends. We all really embody 5 minutes to spare for one another, whether it's industry-based or personal. I feel like there's a really strong sense of culture that I've sort of modeled by my actions, to really just, stop and acknowledge people and connect. And so what I love about the way that our model has kind of morphed into what it has is, we're not necessarily specific when it comes to startups or tech or niches as such. What's been quite powerful in our spaces is the spontaneity of who you're sitting next to. So you might have an astrologer sitting next to someone doing code on Bitcoin and having like this brilliant chat that sort of like sparks something for one of them, whether it's personal or business. And I love that. That's like definitely something that I know the community enjoys as well. The diverse, dynamic. And you kind of never know what you're going to get. It keeps it a bit exciting. We really encourage all of our members to be kind of leaders in our community. So with our events, in our casual events, our internal events, someone will host each month and come up with an idea and get everyone to, buy in, or whatever it's going to be, whether it's like a river float or it's something, a bit more advanced. And then they pass it on, but they they all have that point where they kind of get to sort of show an activity that might mean something to them, or something that they wanted to try, but they've, wanted to do it in a group, but haven't had a group. So there's a real sense of belonging, and I guess that's always our vocal point. Sorry, people keep waving at me.
You're really on the job right now as well. That's actually, while you were both speaking, and I've actually had the privilege of being inside of ECOMSquare and seeing what the space feels like and what your team creates. But for both of you, I'm curious, fostering that connection with members, it takes an investment and it takes time, and it often takes boots on the ground. Not always. A lot of co-working spaces have the goal to automate as much as possible. So I'm curious what both of your structure is for your physical space, if you're investing in community managers, and what that physical, if at all, what that human interaction, what the expectation of human interaction is in both of your spaces. Maybe I'll start with you, Tori.
Community management is a big one for us, and predominantly, for example, in Mount Maunganui, we run a model where, we've got 190 squares is that space. And so our community manager will do that amount of hours. So they'll say 19, 20 hours, and that's kind of how we average how much time you should be spending with your community managers by square meter. And it's always for us in the morning. So like that sort of, as soon as you get in, you're welcomed, you're greeted, and you've been shown to your desk and whatnot. So that's, for us, that's really, really important. And a lot of the time, you know, I'm very happy for Emily to be just connecting with people for 4 hours. Like, to me, that's really important. And that's what everyone has come for. So we do a lot of connection, and then kind of admin comes second. Might aim to do like a little bit more of a balance this year, but yeah.
I think that, yeah, I mean, and I think that also, even just that point of the square meters and how much that actually, in turn, the investment of your community manager's time on space, that's really, it's really interesting. I've never heard a co-working owner have that metric. Curious, Steve, if you have a similar one, or if you have had a different strategy for the expectation of an engagement in the space.
I'll talk to your second question as well, because it kind of plays into our whole philosophy, which is the automation. We were lucky to own the building, so we had full reign of what we wanted to do. If we wanted to build out some new stuff in rooms or equipment, we did that. My goal, and this is just being a lazy founder, is I wanted to make sure I could manage it from the comfort of my couch at home. So we made sure we integrated all keyless systems, which was Keysi, and we installed all our private offices, our doors, our meeting spaces, our bike lockers, our garage gate as well, which was fully automated and integrated. If somebody called me at 9 o'clock at night, or texted me, or messaged us through our support, or anybody who had administrative access, we could help and support them without having to physically drive down or go to the space. And so, you know, kind of have that 24-hour-ish support if we needed it, or have other team members just by virtue become a support system within their own team if they work with other coworkers or coworkers in the co-space. That I think organically also just naturally created tight-knit communities within the space. We did have private offices which were on the peripheral, which were mostly occupied by myself. I had another business which was that I owned and operated, which I put in the space, and a few other ones which were supplementary to some of my partner businesses. And then the main pit was hot desking, but we decked it out as if it was a dedicated desk. I think the orientation of the desk was pretty unique. Like, everyone was kind of facing each other in this octagonal arrangement all throughout. It was like this honeycomb arrangement. So where traditionally it was, you know, lines and rows of desks, people could sit behind their desk, still have privacy of their screen, but talk across to 3 or 4 different people all the same. And the desk space was much larger than, say, a WeWork or a Spaces in the area. We did have a community manager, or we do have a community manager. They're probably, like most co-working spaces, very cross-functional. So managed social events, community planning, also, you know, the building operations, taking out garbage, make sure that the coffee and everything else was taken care of for that day. And tours that would come through. So if there was a request for that, we'd, you know, and anybody else that was actually on staff would take priority. But if there was off scheduled events, we kind of incentivize the existing communities to contribute towards that and say, hey, we'll give you, $40 or $50 of credits for every tour that you did, or reimburse whatever that was towards them contributing. So by virtue, the first touch point of a person coming to the space was an existing member. So you ended up getting a pretty authentic testimonial right from a person. It wasn't a sales pitch or anything. And it reinforced the culture of what the energy that they put into the space, and said, hey, you should talk to X or Y, and this is a really good person to chat to, and this is the space. And it was a really neat conversation. I kind of demoed it a couple times just to hear what other members were chatting about the space, which was a really cool thing. But yeah, it's unlike you, Tori, and this is kind of a really similar thing that I hear within WeWorks and spaces. My wife runs a business. She's in physio, and I used to steal her desk when I went to WeWork and everything. And while it was interesting to hear about different businesses and orientations, I didn't feel like from a true business sense, it wasn't really helping my business. It was helping my social circles and network, but it still felt a bit superficial for me to really engage and invest. So our thesis was, if we cater towards something that's meaningful, that could actually drive revenue and value towards a business, you could establish much deeper connection and stickiness with that network effect. And by virtue of that, it also started to attract, even broader audiences towards that, where, if it's a super hyper focused community, you have that's attentive towards solving similar problems. It allowed us to attract, vendors like Shopify and BigCommerce and RBC, which is a banking institution that was like, hey, these are small businesses. They need our services. Let's see if we can, come to their events or sponsor their events, which ended up happening, which ended up becoming an entirely different revenue stream for us, which I think some co-working spaces can open or unlock that ability from a revenue perspective, which I think was pretty neat. It wasn't a part of the model originally, but it happened pretty naturally soon after.
Really interesting. I think you actually have very distinct examples of what we typically see across co-working, is this trend of co-working or community champions, where people are becoming almost like a part of your team. Mm-hmm. They stay for a year, 2 years. And, Tori, it's always really special to hear stories that you've shared about your community, even the wedding that you got invited to of the members who, meet and, connect in your space. And now 5 years later, you're going to their wedding. There's so much buy-in to this community for both of you. And these people become a part of, the fabric of your team. And so this idea of co-working champions or community champions, I think it's really a growing trend. And it's cool for you to see that tours can be led by people who are paying members and who just love and know the value of your brand. And Tori, for you as well, the champion effect is, having somebody say, this is so much a part of my life that I can invite you to an activity outside of Bad Company that makes me happy and that I feel will connect our community even deeper, like river floating or whatever fun New Zealand activity that you do down there. So I think that it's a concept that applies to not only niches or not only, traditional co-working, it's everyone. And one of the things that you also both have mentioned is this real attraction for the right member. And so, Tori, you're really attracting this person who's interested, and you can definitely, I don't want to put the words in your mouth, you can speak more to this, but you're attracting somebody who wants this diverse community. And Steve, you're attracting a member whose their sole and focus or intention is to grow their business in this one industry of e-commerce. And so I guess outside of knowing who you're attracting, I would love maybe just like super high level. And we've talked about acquisition on another webinar, so I don't know if we need to go too deep into this, but would love for you both to just comment on how you're marketing your space to make sure that you're attracting the type of member who you know is going to fit with your community. Tori, I don't know if you have any ideas or strategies that you've employed that you might want to share.
It's always, I mean, we're still a pretty small business, right? You know, we're operating with, 3 to 4 staff members altogether. All of our spaces are no more than 200 squares. What's been really important to us and living within our means is, where do you choose to spend? And where I feel is really important is having a brand manager. So I work very, very closely with a brand manager that has also now become our franchisee manager. And just completely having a reason for everything that you say, visually put up, and just all it singing, your pillars of what your company is built on, and just working very closely with her, and then for her to be working closely with franchisees and group meetings and whatnot, and making sure that we're kind of all on like design aspect, the way we speak, and that it's all kind of in sync.
This real intentionality. I think that that's so important. And I feel like a lot of people as they're growing don't often stop to question, does this event align with our brand? Does this post align with our brand? And having that clarity, it does ensure that you're attracting the right member who's going to align with your brand. So it's definitely an investment. And I've had many conversations with owners and operators of co-working spaces who say, this is a big investment to put money down for a brand manager or somebody to support us with that. There is definitely benefit in it though, that you've seen. And Steve, would you like to add anything in terms of how you've really curated the community and maybe what efforts you've put out to make sure that you're attracting the right members?
I'd say the first couple of members who came and contributed, definitely, just the personal vibe of them and how they operated, and was you had to be pretty specific around curating that because that set the tone for attracting the next couple of people. We had, and this kind of goes back to the original model, we always played with opposites. We didn't want to be just like every other space in the city. There's enough of those, but how do we be different? And one of the other portions that we wanted to emphasize was we were going to be a noisy space, which is pretty different than what a traditional co-working space was, because we wanted to hear those conversations in the open and make sure that people would be spontaneously picking up on ideas and problems and challenges that other founders and owners were talking about, and you could be across the room and hear about it. So we kind of promoted, hey, take your calls at your desk if you want to. Obviously, if it's a private conversation, we have private booths for that, or a private space. Take it outside. Don't disclose any of that to the public, but feel free to make sure you feel comfortable at the space. And that was a part of the tour. We said, this is a busy space, it's open. If it's not your jam, there's other places we'll recommend that you can go to. But it was very self-selecting in that. So the initial people were very, very boisterous in a really positive way. They, you'd have the water cooler chatter pretty often, and you'd walk in the morning and you get the high fives, and everything else is pretty fun environment to come to every day, and really good conversations and topics that would be flowing. And also really naturally people became, friends and did stuff, outside of the work environment pretty quickly as well. We had a lot of sauna weekends with a couple of people who had them at their home. But the quieter ones, who were those original people, it wasn't the perfect, place to really stem that culture. But as soon as that level of comfort became the norm, we started to see the attraction and also acquisition of people within the space become a lot more noticeable, because you're on a tour for the first time and you walk into a space and people are like leaning back in their chair throwing a football across the room, or this little like putting green where people could golf, and some people were like putting, or the dog was in the corner and people were playing fetch. Like it was such a different look and feel than walking into a co-working space where people were heads down and typing behind their computer. So I think people saw that, and it would either convert you, or you'd say, this is not for me, right? Which also probably spoke to our ability to retain without much issue. Like it was really self-selecting right at the gate.
I think there's also maybe it's like a winning ingredient that I think both of you have done well, which is tours. I think that when you have somebody come in and actually take the time to see the space, do both of you require tours, or is it an option that you promote on your website?
We promoted it, so that was in our initial intake. So if you inquired about membership at any level, we gave 1 week free. At the full, it's the VIP, any amenity, any meeting room, anything you use is fully credited. It's free. After that week, we'd re-engage and say, how's your experience? And if you want to convert, here's the plans. We'd occasionally, on like down seasons, we'd promote it. So we'd say, if you convert here, we'll give you another, a month for half off before you convert to the full time. It was pretty obvious where those cycles of like Optix, we wouldn't do too much promotion around that. But tours, most people converted after that free week. Like it wasn't, I don't think anybody used it for like, oh, here's a freebie, I'm just going to keep hopping from tour to tour to tour from different co-working spaces. If people were interested, they'd see it as like, oh, this is a nice gesture, but I was going to pay anyways. We'd have some members who said, yeah, like just start it before they even finish their trial. They'd be like, start it after my trial is ended, and make sure I have my membership all taken care of.
Yeah, it's that intentionality though. It's a member of your community who's intentionally looking for the space, interested, has invested in the tour. Tori, are you as well requiring tours or promoting them?
It's definitely in the language within our website and on socials, like, come pop in, see us, say hi. We definitely offer, first day free, and then if people are wanting to be permanent, more of a commitment, then we definitely encourage like a week's trial. It was nice hearing Steve talk about his spaces being sort of encouraged to be noisy. We're the same.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always say at the start of a tour is, we'll always have music. There's someone being DJ. We've got dogs. People are chatting. People take calls at their desk, and it is a wonderful way to either get that complete commitment and buy-in, or for someone to be like, oh no, it's not for me. Yeah. But no, tours are great. People need to come in and see everything. And we've got that on our website through Optix, the book a tour, which has been really helpful.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for sharing that. I know that wasn't really initially part of where our conversation was probably going to go, but I think that having that really intentional lens on that first, week, month of a member's journey, ensuring that they are the right fit also ensures that they have a higher chance of staying, and that retention percentage does go up. So lots of tactics that you both actually mentioned just through answering these questions. But one thing that I know is so key in co-working, and it's almost synonymous at this point, when you think of co-working, you think of events, you think of community. And I think that it's very valuable for other people on the webinar. If you're an owner, operator, operations manager, community manager, I think it's really helpful to understand where your budget is going. Are you investing in events up front? Are you investing in, again, Tori, you've mentioned this, that community manager and that hospitality point of, they're there when you arrive on site. That's something that you've chosen to invest in. I guess for both of you, maybe Steve, I'll start with you. Where have you been seeing the most success? And I know you have a partnership background as well, but where have you seen the most success in investing in your community? Maybe a juicier.
I would say our events, but our events take different shapes and form. They're not just, we'll do a panel discussion or anything like that. We had waffle mornings, so we'd cook waffles. There was an opportunity to network as well. We had happy hours after work. We had speaker series, which was sharing of knowledge. We had sweat activations, which were jumping on a bike and going for a long road ride in the summertime. We had Whistler ski trips on Sundays, so like cycling and commerce. So people would go up to the mountain and have fun in the snow. We had running events, which was also a sweat activation. So every touch point had networking opportunity, sharing of ideas, different types of stickiness and ways to engage. Some had higher caliber of an entry point, like a ski trip would be, you have to be skilled to join. Whereas the happy hour waffle, it was a bit of an easier play. I think our environment and city that we live in contributes to that. It attracts a certain type of founder, and most founders, enjoy a lot of these activities anyways. So why not just do them all at the same time? That was the idea. It also kind of goes back to the partnership conversation too. Having different variety of events also allowed us to open it up to sponsorship dollars. So the more that we did and the different types of events that we had with different focus groups, like we did a couple of investing and raising of capital and VC ones. AMX ended up coming out and saying, hey, we'll sponsor you for a year if you want to do 3 events with our logo on it, 2 networking stuff. If you orient around CFOs and finance people, that's our audience.
Right.
We'd love to sponsor you and give you a check. So they paid up front for the year. We set like an arbitrary number of what we thought the value was going to be, and it, highly profitable arrangement. So the other thing that we did too was for a bunch of other vendors too. But I think even if I'm looking at that percentage, 50% of our time, it was beyond 50% was addressing that, because it was just such a snowball effect into so much other value proposition for all of our members to contribute to. The other percentage was purely just operating the space, making sure it's clean, and you're reordering. And even still, some of that stuff became very automated. Like once you understood the cadence, you set up an Amazon Prime subscription, and you got your toilet paper and amenities, and all your cleaning supplies and stuff are taken care of. And honestly, Optix's integration into everything else as well just reduced our operational burden for the space. A lot of the memberships were, self-managed. You could automate all the room bookings, the meeting space bookings, event space bookings, all our event registrations, through Eventbrite, but promoted directly through Optix. So all that, even like our abandonment and reminders, all that stuff was through Zapier and set up. So once we had that all set up, it was pretty cookie cutter. We had all this time essentially, and like, okay, what are we going to spend our time to attract more people, retain them, and do it? And events was just such an easy path for that.
Yeah, it really is synonymous with the word co-working. And I think that there's so many, I want to be mindful of everyone's time as well. We will go over a few moments. And there's a great question from Kelsey as well, which I think we're going to jump into right now. But Tori, I think that your investment in community is also unique in that, it might look a little bit different for a niche versus a more traditional community. And so I definitely want to circle back and make sure that we have some time for you to speak to those ideas and the strategies that you've employed so successfully. But maybe, Tori, I'll actually pass this question off to you first. This is from Kelsey. My co-working space is connected to preschool, which very successful model that I have seen out there, Kelsey. Which I think gives a very specific type of audience. Yes, definitely. We have parents that have private offices, which is great for retention. Do you have any suggestions of how to retain others who I see come in from traveling for work or starting a business? So maybe not the parents with the private offices, but the more transient member.
I would say, if they're coming in, transient, but they're dropping their child at daycare, is that correct? Like in the same
I don't know if it's
facility?
necessarily that they're dropping them off at daycare. It looks like part of the business model is to do that. So there's definitely one type of member, but there might be a completely different type of member who's coming in on a more casual basis. And how, maybe some ideas for how to attract them and keep them engaged alongside the more stable ICP or ideal customer profile.
I think if I was going down the track of offering that element, then I would specifically be targeting parents and be very much, in terms of my events or offerings, be things that are adding ease or like a bit of a timeout to their day-to-day life in terms of retention and them sort of sticking around. And I guess if they're sort of like dropping in and able to, I don't know, maybe they're just trialing it for a day, and their child is next door. There is always, I guess, that element of them knowing that they're there. So I guess being able to create an environment where they can just completely zone into what they need to do, and maybe also have some, like, is there like a tea time where you just like have a bit of an honest share about how things are going, or, is there, like how Steve was saying, how with a few of his seating plans is in sort of like a hive kind of aspect, like be quite interesting to sort of like gather the parents in a certain area to kind of really orchestrate a bit of chat.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to as well, sort of who is that ICP? Who are you trying to attract? And if you're investing in parents, and that is a very successful model, Kelsey, that I have seen across the board. But if you're investing in parents, maybe it's an important investment to have the events really catered to that part of your community. When you have, I think what Steve has also spoken to, when you have this more transient member who's coming in and maybe they're just a one-off event or they're there for the day, when they start to see what the bigger offering is and what your brand is really about, that's where you're going to get people who say, oh, this is actually, great because I'm also a parent and maybe my child isn't on site, but I really enjoy connecting with parents. So if that's the central focus of your offering, I think that's where you start to attract, again, the same type of interests and people with similar values. Steve, anything you want to add though, in terms of ideas or suggestions?
Yeah, I think I understand the comment, and Kelsey, feel free to jump in on the chat. I think your question is around, you have a really strong niche focus. You're going to attract a really specific audience, and it's going to be self-selecting. If I'm a customer and I see the space, I'm going to know the reasons why you're operating in that sense. And I think you're asking, if you have these peripheral people who still want co-working space and you have a spot available for them, if you bring them into the space, how do you continue having them a part of the space? And if I'm completely off on that, feel free to jump in. But I would counter with, that's not your customer, and say, don't dump the energy into trying to retain them, because they're going to be just as quick as leaving, and it's going to distract you from your core audience, and you're going to start to think about other things, which is going to beef up your operations, create more complexity for you, and it's going to dilute your main focus as a business. We have, I'm sure everywhere in the world, it's such a crazy problem to try to find space in daycare for your kid. You have such a huge leg up for offering that, where as a parent, I still need my solo space, but I'm going to try to reduce my commute time to jump across the city and all that stuff. Dig into that as deep as you can. And that's going to showcase in your ability to retain those people, because that's your core audience, that's your core member. They're going to talk about that with all their other parent circles and everybody else, and really, really hone in on that messaging.
Just to build on that one as well, something that I have seen, I've worked with a lot of clients who have the childcare co-working model, Kelsey, and one of the things that I think has been done really successfully, not to say that you need to become a women-only focused co-working space, but one thing that I have seen also done really successfully is that some of these co-working childcare spaces, they're not limited to members who have their child on site. So probably similar to your model, where you do accept day drop-ins and maybe somebody who has like a 5-day, 10-day pass. But what I have done, or what I have seen done successfully, is the offering is more tailored to the parent experience, where it's women's night. It's like Women's Wine Wednesday. And this is really for moms. So even if your child's on site or not, this is an opportunity for you to connect with people who are members and do also have the same lifestyle values as you, being maybe a new parent. So I think, yeah, Steve, to build on that, really honing in on, you don't have to stay right there with the parents, but speaking a little bit more to like who that demographic is, the ICP, and staying closer to that range.
We love our kids, but we also want to party by ourselves as well. Sharing the pain as being a parent.
Did you want to add something, Tori?
Yeah, I was just going to say, just as a event idea, to also be catering to the single parents. I'd be definitely doing some speed dating, or, dating events where, you bring a friend that you recommend, but you don't want to date yourself. And I get that a lot
of that in bad company, I think, with
there's a lot of people that are sick of the apps. They love the community. They're like, there's been a demand, and it's worked really well for us in the past to do some really neat speed dating events. And that could be wonderful for some single parents.
Yeah, super cool. One other question in the question box here that I just want to, maybe it's a quick rapid fire, but what would you say both of your ratio is for desks and chairs compared, so maybe the dedicated desks compared to more of the soft seating? This is a question from Mark, which might be, the lounge, couches, sofas. What's the ratio of the desks to the soft spaces? And do you combine those spaces? Maybe Steve, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think our square footage for the desk was it was like 120 to 150 square feet, which is pretty big. It felt big. You could have your own stuff in there. We had soft seating and couches in the same space, in the open space of our hot desks. We didn't have dedicated desks or designated, but some people gravitated towards the same desk when they came in, if they were Monday to Friday members. The reason for that is we wanted spontaneity on the dynamics of where people sat. We wanted to have that ability for people to share different ideas with different people in the space. And the one thing that we did, we queried pretty early on of what determined a person from paying for a hot desk versus a dedicated desk. And most of it was around to do with peripherals. So they wanted their own chair that was something more comfortable. They wanted a screen to have a secondary monitor. And we ended up just decking it out for them. So every desk had a 4K 27 or 32-inch monitor, which was there. They could plug in their USB-C or HDMI. We had Herman Miller, designer chairs. We had some, stands for laptops as well, which was on every hot desk. But it also allowed us to charge a premium for a hot desk. So our pricing was a bit more, not much more than other hot desks in the space, but it was also less than a dedicated desk comparatively to another space because inherently they were offered as a hot desk. Everyone loved that, and most people, other than community and all that, they're like, you had a monitor, like that's the only reason why I'd choose this over like a private office and spending a significant amount more.
And then in the space again, you had a small lounge area, if I'm remembering correctly.
We had a kitchen. We had 2 floors. So downstairs also had lounge area with a TV, kitchen.
And that was probably a little bit less than the office. I mean, the 2 floors does help in that regards, but the soft spaces was probably a little bit less than the actual desk space that you did. Yeah so absolutely. Not 50-50, but maybe
we had like a foyer which was also enclosed, but it was by the main office or main entrance. But you could take your calls there if you wanted to, just sit on the couch and lounge. You still felt like it was in a private space. You could lounge by, the greeting area, which also had really comfortable couches. You could sit there with your phone, do some work. There's a couple of little corners all throughout the space where you could sit down, like beanbag chairs and other places where you could just chill, but still be within a couple little steps from your desk. And then downstairs was we offered it like, or marketed like a coffee shop. So how often do you go to a coffee shop? What are you going to spend on your coffee every single month? And we kind of priced it around that. So it was $59 a month. You had full access Monday to Friday downstairs, whatever was in the fridge, the coffee. You could set up your laptop, do your emails before you head downtown or head out to the airport, and you can take whatever meetings around there. And some people just signed up and they're like, I'll use it once a month because I'm stopping in. It's a great spot. Other people camped out, 3 times, 4 times a week, but it didn't really, we could scale that infinitely without having too much, pressure on our footprint for usage. And then lunchtime, everyone from upstairs would come downstairs. It would become a bit noisier, became a social space, and then people would go behind their desk again. So it was a nice little separation of space too.
It was a beautiful space, FYI. I have been. Well, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. We have gone over expected. We usually do some questions at the very end of the 45 minutes. But I just want to say thank you, both Steve and Tori. Thank you for sharing your experience, your ideas, and just in general, your philosophy. It's amazing to see how when you invest in your community, really great things happen. both ECOMSquare and Bad Company are a testament to that. Niche co-working, we know that this is a trend moving into 2024. Steve, it was great to hear about your experience of curating a niche and how that really did have a big part of the success of your community. It's not necessarily the only thing, though, for creating success. Bad Company is a beautiful example of that, with so much growth under their belt, and from all investing in the diversity of a community. So lots of really great learnings. I think that when you have a hustle, bustle, lively community, it's almost selling itself. And Adam said this in our first webinar as well. It's, when people are loving the space and they're loving the experience and they feel seen and they've met somebody who has expanded their understanding of maybe e-commerce or of their community, that's what keeps them wanting more. And that investment of having people on the floor to create that experience in Bad Company, and for the investment in community partnerships and events that you've done, Steve, these are all incredible tactics. So thank you for sharing these thoughts. Thank you for everybody for signing in and enjoying the conversation, for your questions. See you all hopefully at our third and final webinar for this series that will be coming up in the next 4 to 8 weeks. And in the meantime, you can join our We Run Flex community for more insights, share questions, and also for all of the resources from this webinar. So thank you, everybody. And Tori and Steve, we'll see you soon.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for having me too. See ya.